Yeah, sure. Like Nick mentioned, my name's Matt. We got got introduced in the Discord for open source, and also I was popping in on a stream like Nick had mentioned. And lately, I'd kind of been learning more about GitHub Actions, and so this was sort of a use case that sounded like it'd be fun to work on, and I had some idea of how to do it. So we'll try and work together on it. Honestly, I'm gonna look and see if maybe it showed up in open source because sometimes stuff like that does, but yeah, I didn't see it in the announcements thing. But what were you asking though? Where to drop what? Yeah, if you have if you have access to it, there's one called Share Your Content, and then there's another one called Hanging Out. Yeah, either one would probably be. Don't even know which username is where. Yeah. I've definitely learned a lot more in the last 3 or 4 weeks, yeah. Yeah, that's a great intro for sure. I know that they had GitHub Universe last week, and I think there was a lot of content that was kind of built around some of the use cases and different things for GitHub Actions. And I think that my interest in it had come as part of working on that open source project with B. Dougie because he had so much content that was related to that stuff. I know that a very common use case for GitHub Actions is CI/CD in terms of having something that is, bound to the repo itself or bound to the organization through like the .github repo within your organization. You can put actions and other artifacts in there that are, practical across the org or whatever. But anyway, one like super common one that I remember him describing before was like you could run a GitHub action that would check the lighthouse score for your app and look for deviations like did it go down or did it go up or was it within whatever kind of spec you came up with. And there were probably lots of moving parts in trying to get something like that running, or maybe it was actually pretty simple, but it's something where any kind of item that could benefit from automation is definitely something worth considering for the GitHub action in terms of you know beat beating it up. Yeah, that's one thing. I think I remember like the use case that you brought here, trying to send out a tweet for somebody's first merge pull request. The I guess here's another way to look at it. The things that I remembered from open source project and others in terms of the use case that you would kind of add up to get to that. There's a few different GitHub actions that we have in place for open source, and one of them is looking at whether or not it's the first time somebody had contributed to that project, like first time that they'd opened a PR, I think most specifically. And when that is the case, it's appropriate, or it would be really good to come up with like a welcome message or something else to say, like to just kind of say, hey, if you want extra context, then maybe come over to the Discord server and ask some questions specifically and make it a little bit more of a synchronous conversation. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I know. I mean, when you look at like the kind of the effects that happen after that interaction of they open the PR and there's a welcome message and it says like, "Hey, join us in the Discord." If they had seen that in the docs, that would have been one thing, but to just kind of say like, "Hey, now's a really good time to jump in here and talk about what you got going on." There've been definitely times, like a few times where people have opened a PR and for whatever reason, like they were either stuck on it or maybe there's one or two other extra missing pieces and they just didn't quite understand what was going back and forth in that kind of asynchronous, dry way in terms of the back and forth for an issue. It was a lot easier to kind of come to the right understanding in that other context. So anyway, the point is like using the GitHub action to detect the fact that it's their first PR and leave a comment and whatever else, make something configurable out of that. So that was one half of the use case for this one in terms of like trying to send out a tweet on somebody's first time doing something. And then the other one that I think B. Dougie had alluded to with respect to this one was I think it was called Tweeps, which I don't know if that's like a play on Twitter and Peeps or I don't know. So we'll roll with it. Yeah. From what I had looked into that project a little bit, and I think that the way that it works is that you can open up a PR into this open source project that's run by Gregor Martinez. I don't know how you say his name, but he's sort of like one of the maintainers, and he might be the maintainer for OctaKit. and I think multiple other projects. And anyway, he maintains this thing. You can send a PR to it, and I think the way that it works is if you in the PR you make a file and you put a piece of text in it that is meant to eventually become a tweet. And I think what happens is when it gets merged, the service count actually makes that tweet. And I guess the idea was like, hey, have an open source power tweeting operation.
Okay. I just realized my mic was off of Vortex. My mic's on, you can hear me, but the closed captioning's on. But am I good now? -1. I haven't streamed on my own stream in a while, and I have settings so like I just realized mine was completely muted. So basically, you've been talking the whole time. It's all good. It's all good.
I can
I'm
talk.
tired and not yeah I'm tired and not feeling well, so it's par for the course. So all good. All right.
But Ed, you should know that I can't see the chat, so I don't know what you're saying.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, yeah. If you're wondering why I'm looking away, it's just I'm checking the chat or responding to
Oh,
people.
good,
I'm not
awesome.
watching like YouTube cat videos being bored or something. Yeah. So well, it's something always goes wrong on the stream, and I have this stuff automated, but for the dev stream I have it all automated, and I do have my own stream automated, but this is the first time I'm streaming on my own stream in a while with somebody else, and we
Mhm.
not that it was rushed, but I didn't really configure it before we started. So I'm gonna tweak that later. But thanks for that. Anthony's saying he didn't realize I had my own stream. Yeah, this is actually where the dev stream kind of started. I mean, the dev account existed, I think, but I started pairing with people in the community on my own stream, and then came around and I was like, hey, well, why don't we just stream with people on the dev account because nobody's using it. So anyways, yeah, that's where I'm at. And Anthony's saying he's got a Twitch account too. So give Anthony a follow if you want to learn about StepZen, Redwood JS, probably pretty much anything.
Yeah, I've sat in on a few of those streams for Steps in at least. I've liked them.
Yeah, Lucia works with, I know Lucia who works with Anthony, and she's super cool. And she's actually on the dev
Yeah.
stream, and we talked a bit about StepZen and GraphQL. So that was cool. I know you just finished work. I'm gonna probably have to get my kid to jujitsu and swimming later. So why don't we jump into what we're gonna work on today? And I just put you on big screen, which is not what I meant to do. Yeah, so we're gonna go live here with the wrong screen because I am not feeling well and I'm picking the wrong things. Let's go and pick the right one. Where's my VS Code? There we go. So yeah, so we're gonna take a peek at a project. So after I had spoken to you in the Twitch chat when BW was on the dev stream, we had talked about like, oh hey, well why don't we, pair on this and work on this. So that's it took a few weeks because our schedules got messed up a bit. Like I wasn't available last week, I think, because something came up. So yeah, so today, yeah. So today I don't know how far we're gonna get, but I created this well, not boilerplate. I just created this project called Epic Actions. It's publicly available on my GitHub. I'll share the link, but it's kind of like there's nothing with GitHub Actions in it yet. It's just really like a lot of boilerplate. Like I have like pre-commit hooks, just a lot of stuff in place. I'd set it up for like JavaScript, but like we don't necessarily have to do the GitHub action in JavaScript like we were saying, Matt. We can if we want to, but I know you've been talking about maybe taking a peek at a bash version because it might perform better. So I guess,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, and to be clear, I've never built a GitHub action, which nobody heard me say before, only you. So I do know there's like a configuration file. It's a YAML
Mhm.
file. That's kind of like the extent of, I know you can obviously like pull in like a container or something or whatever you're planning to do, run a script, but I've never built one. So I don't know
Yep.
what the best place to start is for building this out. What do you think makes sense?
I think that talking through maybe the workflow file like you mentioned before and just where that goes and how it gets put together and that sort of thing is probably a great place to start. And actually for that part, it's probably easier to just, like share a screen in the browser, and I don't know if that's something I can do from here. Like
Yeah,
consider what
yeah, yeah. Go ahead, share your screen, and then I'll stop sharing my screen for a sec.
okay.
And you're on the big screen for a sec here. And then once you got that set up, I'll just put it on the I'll make it big on the screen for people. And oh, it opened and closed for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know why.
If it closes again, let me know and I'll just open up one. Oh yeah, okay, it's closing. I'll just try and load one up here. Let me open up my browser. It could be, I don't know if you need to restart Discord. Sometimes that's what you need to do, but
It could be, but
if you want to
it's
pop off
fine.
and come right back. Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's
So
fine in yours.
let
Kind of
me,
fun.
okay, let me share my screen. Here we go. All right. Let's do this again. And the funny thing is, whenever I share a screen on Discord, I start trying to use it on the actual screen share and not the actual browser. So, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna go to my repository unless you know of a place,
Yeah,
or
it's a good place to start. Yeah, for sure.
because I'll show you what I have in place. So, like we were saying, which nobody heard me before because my mic was off. So, if we come into my project, so this is the special README repo where you can have your customized README. So, I added a workflow from an open source contributor, and I don't think there's anything too fancy in the one I have, but let me zoom in here just for the folks at home. All right. So this is just the name, and or maybe do you want to talk through about what the pieces
Oh
are here
yeah.
maybe, or okay.
Yeah, you got a lot of great pieces to talk about in here. So to go through kind of the anatomy of what you're showing here, you got the name, which is sort of the first YAML. What is it called? Which in this particular case, you're just saying that the name of this thing is latest content that I make. And I guess what you're doing is this is kind of a scraper kind of deal. Like, is it grabbing
Yeah, it's
information, updating it?
yeah, so what it's doing is if you look at the last sub property
Mhm.
there, I don't know if they're called properties in the YAML file, but the feed list property, it's a
Mhm.
list, comma separated list of RSS feeds. So there's a few
Oh yeah.
YouTube ones there. There's like if I scroll over, I have my own blog here and just like
Mhm.
a few others, forum.dev and my own community here. Basically, it's just a whole list of RSS feeds and what the way the action works is it pulls in all these feeds, and the second property you see there on line 16, max post count, it'll only
Mhm.
grab 6. So like if I just to show you what that looks like, for example, just to give a bit more context, not Mick, I'm Nick, right? Okay, so it pulls in those 6, and then you'll see down here, that's what this is here.
Okay.
There's a template, and there's like a section of HTML comments, and then it just
Mm.
injects the latest 6 in there. I don't know what the algorithm is to decide which 6 to grab, but if people are interested, you can check this out here.
It
This
does
is
what it does.
yeah, I'll drop this workflow in the chat, but yeah, if you want to maybe talk about the other pieces, I feel like I can kind of figure out what some of them are, but just maybe for the folks at home.
Oh yeah, no doubt. So we talked about the name, great vanity thing. The next thing is the on field at the top level there, and then it has the two parts, and one of them is schedule, and the other one is workflow dispatch. So schedule, you got awesome comment there saying like, okay, this expression for cron runs every Monday at 1 p.m. UTC.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's pretty straightforward in terms of what that's going to do for you. At a specific time, a day or minute, hour, whatever it is, whatever that cron gives you the opportunity to take advantage of, you can put it on that schedule. And then also you have workflow dispatch with really nothing else specified. And the advantage of having workflow dispatch is sort of an event. Really, these are the events that are going to trigger this action. So it's either on a
okay,
schedule, like the cron job. Another event that could trigger it is the workflow dispatch. And what that's
okay.
going to let you do is run it directly from the GitHub web user interface. So when
Yeah, I can
you're,
show that.
yeah, go for it.
Whoops, not there. Sorry. Yeah, so if I come to actions here, if you have GitHub
Mhm.
Actions, it adds this up. So I can select, that's the name of my workflow, and then I can come here and then choose it.
Yep.
I always run it on the main branch because I'm not really
Yeah.
new branches for my README, but that's what you're speaking to?
Yep, exactly.
Okay,
That's right.
all
So
right.
it's definitely super convenient in terms of like forcing it to run however many times it takes. I think that there are still really, really good ways of making an iterative process to make the changes that you need to see and then make sure that they do what you think they're going to do. I just haven't
Yeah,
mastered it yet. The workflow dispatch for me is super convenient for that.
okay.
So then
Okay,
kind
what's
of going
this?
down the list, because you do have like the pieces in play here, and so that's the jobs. And so in the jobs container, you've got, what is this? Update readme with blog, and that's a particular job.
Yeah.
But you could have more than one job. And so like if there was maybe another destination or another thing, like maybe, when it ran on that cycle, you also wanted to like post something on Twitter or whatever about, hey, my such and such got updated or whatever. You could have that be another job that runs separately that maybe depends on this one, or maybe you'd rather it run concurrently. So in the case
Okay.
of jobs, like I think that's where it becomes interesting for CI/CD applications and that sort of thing, because you can have more than one job, but they can run concurrently. They can run
Okay.
at the same time as each other, but you can also introduce dependencies in between them. So like if
Okay,
one
gotcha.
actually needs the other to be finished, then so and so. And so
Cool.
if you wanted to get very, very academic about it, Zero Vortex, who might still be in the chat, he did a
Yeah, I think he
lot of
is.
work in open source for a release workflow, and it's
Okay.
got all these moving parts, 4 or 5 different moving parts. And I think I remember like it builds a Docker image, it handles release notes, it runs like tests and everything prior to that. I think it cuts releases, and there's a few other things that it handles as well, but it's all just sort of interrelated, and some
Okay.
pieces run at the same time and some don't. So
Okay,
that's kind of
gotcha.
nice about the job stuff. Yep.
Okay,
So
cool.
then, yeah, I know, right? Stepping down into name, that's, more specific within that particular job, just to kind of annotate it a little bit more. Runs on Ubuntu latest. So this is going to be like what operating system that particular action is going to, or that particular job is going to run on. And
Okay.
there's more than just Ubuntu latest, but you do see it pretty commonly in terms
Okay.
of the one that people select. It spins up pretty quickly, and it's got the different Linux utilities that you're likely to gonna want to have. To speak to like where you might see that use case somewhere else, I've seen something where they run like multiple builds of, I think it was a Go project, so you had executables with multiple targets and things like that. So they would run on Apple, run on Ubuntu, run on whatever
Okay.
other Linux, run on Windows, etc. Windows was always the one that was the slowest, but anyway,
Yeah.
um,
No, gotcha. Okay.
so that's
So
where
that's
that would
cool.
come into play. And then you
Nice.
had step.
Oh no, sorry. Okay, you got steps, you said?
Yeah, steps, those are going to be the ones that are actually sequential. And one of the things that you brought up earlier, like what's still highlighted, is that you reused a couple of pieces here. So
Okay.
the actions checkout, what that's going to do is it's going to check out a copy of the repo that you have this workflow running within.
Yeah.
So it's going to kind of do a git operation to check out like a local copy of it. And then the next sequential item is, you can see it like marked by that hyphen. The next one down is uses, and then this was the one that you were going to drop a link to, where it does
Yeah.
a blog post workflow. Yeah, and so when it's finished, I'm assuming that it's kind of making some updates to your, what is it, README, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. There's like a template. If I come
Yep.
to the, let's see if we come into the code here, the
Mm-hmm.
README. So this is the latest README, but if we go to the raw, so you see how there's this, I'll zoom it in a bit, but there's this, there we go, let me scroll down. There's this latest
Love it.
content and then blog list start and blog list end. So you can see right now it's replaced with what the latest RSS feed stuff got pulled in. But the next time that
Yeah.
action is going to run, it just updates whatever was in there
Mm-hmm.
between those two HTML comments. So that's how
Mm-hmm.
that's working. Again, I don't know how the actual action's implemented, but that's,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
So that's the nice thing about it. That one other thing to point out is, like, on those 2 lines, it uses actions checkout at V2, and then uses the other one at master. So you're taking advantage of the GitHub tags to say like, this version of the action I want it to, or this particular version, and that way, like in the case of actions checkout at V2, you're not going to have any weird surprises that happen when they go to
Yeah, yeah.
V3. Like, you're back at V2. And
Yeah,
then in the
exactly.
case
So you
of,
can live on there without any issues.
right. Exactly. And then on the other case, like maybe this one, the blog post workflow, you'd rather just stay up to date on whatever the latest version that he's got available. And so you're going to stay
Yeah.
on that math.
I think that
So
was me accidentally going YOLO mode and I just copy pasted. So I probably should lock that down to a version. But I think he has that in his documentation, and mainly
mm,
probably because he hasn't. I think probably because there's no breaking changes maybe. But yeah.
right,
Okay, so that
right.
makes sense. So the uses are they're kind of like importing things in, and they're kind of Lego
Mm.
blocks so you can build on as something else to
Yeah.
build. Yeah,
So,
cool.
if you wanted to take this and kind of say the one that we're going to build, how would it compare to this? It's
Yeah.
actually probably pretty similar. So instead of schedule or workflow dispatch, we'd probably use a pull request or pull request target, and you would use the closed.
Okay.
I don't know what you call that, but it's basically like when the pull request gets closed,
Okay.
because that's
Gotcha.
the point at which it would be merged.
Okay. Cool.
So then you probably wouldn't bother with a workflow dispatch. You probably wouldn't bother with a schedule. You're going to kind of take advantage of that when the pull request is closed. And as
Yeah.
we're iterating on it, I think what I would probably say is like we could use pull request and we could actually have it as open, closed, or edited. That way we can open and close it manually and we can see the action run right up until it's time to
Okay.
say like, well, when the merge happens, how does it behave?
Okay. Gotcha.
That's like the commentary on in terms of the events. Um,
Okay. No, that's a good run through. Yeah, awesome. So I guess at this point, I know you're a lot more familiar with this than me because I'm like still a noob at this. So I guess the first thing we would do is let's create the YAML file, or what would
mhm.
you do? Okay.
Yeah, I think what I would suggest is if we want to work on our own branch or on a separate branch, then we'd open a new branch and then we'd be operating within the directory that you have there of
Yeah.
.github and workflows, and we'd create a new YAML file within your repo that we want to use.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I'm gonna stop sharing this and I'll share my VS Code. And if you want to go ahead, because I'm gonna let you drive since you shared the VS. Oh, and I shared the wrong thing again. Oh man,
Mhm.
my game is off today. VS Code. There we go. Okay, cool. And I'm just gonna make this a little bigger. All right, that's good. And I'll hide the terminal for now. So I guess if you want to create a new branch,
Mhm.
and then we can go from
Work
there.
with
Because
that.
I'm in your live share, so if you create the new branch, it's just going to be reflected on my side too.
Okay,
Um,
let me try and create one and take it from there.
I will be back in like 1 minute. I have soup defrosting for my one of my kids, so I'll be right back. But you can type away, and I'll be back in a minute.
All right.
All right, all good. Okay, cool. So we got I guess you created the branch, and we have like a kind of like a starting YAML.
Yeah, I was looking over something that I had done kind of early on, and I think I was on the wrong branch or something. Like we had kind of started on this thing early on. Anyway, the thing with this repo is that I think it was envisioned as like a mono repo for multiple actions. And so you would add like multiple folders within it.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that you still can do is when you run the action on or when you try to create the YAML file in .github workflows,
Okay.
that's going to be where you put the action on the repo that you want it to run against. So, like for example, if you were doing forum or dev, some of the repo that you wanted to use this action of tweeting first merge, you would put the workflow file there, but the workflow file would refer to the action that you're defining on this repo. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
going back to what you were showing earlier with the workflow file, you were referring to actions checkout and you were referring to this, latest blog post. What you're building is one of those. And so
Yeah.
the syntax and everything's a little bit different in terms of the way that you're going to define it. But in any case, we can kind of get going on it. So if I go ahead and create new folder, I'm gonna just say, oh, I put it in the wrong spot.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
the
do a new
folder.
folder and call it tweet first merge bash,
Okay.
and then I'm gonna create a action.yaml, and I'm gonna be referring like back and forth to a few things as I'm looking in here. Are you seeing any of these changes yet?
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I see it. It's all good.
Perfect. So I'm just going to kind of refer to an older version of what we were looking for here. And so
Yeah.
this is an action.yaml file. And this is again like action slash checkout or the other one that you where it was gathering blog posts and things like that. So some of the fields and things like that are different. So you got name, which you're going to see it all the time. Description, here's like a nice little perk of YAML syntax of you can do multiple lines. So having that caret, is that what it's called? A caret chevron or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
I always call it greater
the
than, and
greater.
the carrot's like the hat on top, like the French. It's called. Anyways.
I'm just going to do the rest of the stream like this. Anyway, the greater than sign that kind of lets you do like multiple lines, and that way you can be a little bit more expressive in the syntax. You got the author, you got branding. Branding, like if you ever put this thing on a marketplace, this will be one of the required things that you have to show. It's like, okay,
Okay.
what color should it be? What kind of icon should it show? I got to put an author. I got to put other stuff in there as well. And then there's some other stuff here that are kind of similar to what we were shown before, but again, more specific to being an action itself. And so
Okay.
this one runs using Docker. We're going to use using Ubuntu latest, and we're going to kind of run some bash stuff. There's also
Okay.
inputs and outputs as well. So we'll kind of talk through those. So I'm
Yeah,
just going to
and
grab like the first portion of this. So pretty much like if you ever put it on Marketplace, it would be a blue PR icon is essentially
okay.
what that comes down to.
Okay, I see. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, okay. You don't need to specify an actual image. You can just set some metadata and it knows what to make it look like.
yeah, yeah. When you go through if you're kind of going through the process of releasing an act, what will happen is it'll be looking at this YAML file and it'll say like, hey, you need to add branding information as well. And there's kind of a wizard or a workflow tool that you go through that lets you like pick an
Okay.
icon or whatever. My
Okay,
guess
cool.
is that would be equivalent maybe to that. What is it called? Octacon's repo. It's probably
Yeah.
equivalent.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
never been in that repo, but it'll look like the PR icon, I guess, in blue. Uh, and so when you're picking the using Ubuntu latest, it knows to just grab it from Docker Hub or something.
Yeah, I think GitHub actually has its own like Docker registry. Like it
Didn't
in
know
and of
that.
itself, it has its own registry. And I think this is one of the things that gets used for it. I think like the same tech is used for the code spaces, like spinning up a container or whatever. I don't know what the terminology is.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, yeah. Anthony says GitHub has their own registry.
yeah, in terms of like runs using and Ubuntu latest and all that stuff, I'm going to refer back to the for a minute. Okay, and we'd also define inputs and outputs. So this isn't quite enough information for the YAML file or for the workflow to run, the action to run,
Okay.
whatever the word is. Like we would still need to give it like, hey, here's what you actually do. But in
Yeah.
the meantime, you still need to give it a little bit more parameters as well. So inputs, like I remember when we were talking over the issues list, where you had maybe issue number 2 or 4, I can't remember. You said like, hey, we should have a template message for sending a tweet. Like what should the message format generally be? So we would say template message. And I can't remember if you have to put these in like what's it called, snake case or yeah, it looks like generally by convention you're putting dashes in the middle.
Uh, I'm gonna have to go in a couple minutes, unfortunately.
Oh, cool.
My yeah, no, I know we started late. I'm not. It's I
Yeah.
gotta get one of my kids to swimming. But yeah, let's just talk through the template message and then we'll kind of wrap it up for today. But like I think I'll check in with you when a good time is to hook up again to jump on again. I could have sworn my kid's swimming was later, but it apparently is not because she just opened my door. That's on me. Yeah. Yeah, Anthony's saying, well, bot doesn't like screaming snake case. Yeah, I guess not. So this section here, this is just kind of like the tweet we would want to send out to people, right?
Yeah, and what we're doing is we're just kind of making a template. So when it comes time to the business logic, we would be looking for that percent user percent, just as whatever generic kind of term, and replace that with whatever we find in the GitHub user's profile, if they do have a Twitter username defined.
Yeah. Okay.
Not
Cool.
congrats on the
Yeah.
merge.
Yeah. Well, I know we didn't get too far on what we're actually
Fine.
going to be working on, but I think you gave a really great rundown of kind of like why you would want to have a GitHub action and also
Mhm.
just kind of breaking down the pieces. And just want to say thanks, everybody, and we will see you next week.